Okay, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer before your brain has time to edit it.
That's terrifying. Go ahead.
Have you ever looked back at a relationship that ended, one that you know rationally wasn't right, and still thought that was the one?
More than once.
And you knew it wasn't true. You knew the relationship had real problems. You knew why it ended.
Knew it completely. Could list every reason, had listed every reason, to my friends, to myself at 3 a.m. in my notes app.
And still,
there was this version of them in my head that had nothing to do with who they actually were. Softer, better, more everything.
That's what I want to talk about tonight, because I think this is one of the most universal things humans do after a loss, and one of the least understood. We don't just miss people after breakups, we rebuild them. We turn them into something they never quite were, and then we grieve that version, the one we invented.
Which is somehow even harder than grieving the real one.
So why does this happen? Because it doesn't feel like a choice. Nobody decides, I'm gonna spend the next 6 months romanticizing someone who made me cry every other week.
If it were a choice, nobody would choose it.
But the brain does it anyway, and there's actually a really specific reason why. Memory is not a recording, it's a reconstruction. Every time you remember something, you're not playing back a file, you're rebuilding it from fragments, and those fragments get shaped by your current emotional state.
So, when you're lonely, or stressed, or scared that you'll never feel that way about someone again,
the reconstruction gets edited. The difficult parts get softer. The good parts get brighter. And over time, the memory drifts further and further from what actually happened.
Until what you're missing isn't really them at all. It's a highlight reel your own brain produced and then forgot it produced.
And the brain has a very specific motive for doing this. It's called depressive realism avoidance. When something painful happens, a loss, an ending, the mind instinctively tries to protect you from the full weight of it. One way it does that is by making the lost thing seem more valuable than it was. Because if it was truly extraordinary, then the loss makes sense. The pain is justified. You're not falling apart over nothing, you're falling apart over something magnificent.
So the idealization is almost self-protective.
In the short term, yes. It gives the grief a container. It makes the pain feel proportionate. But long term,
you're trying to get over someone who never fully existed. And I think there's something else happening too. Something about unfinished business. Because I've noticed that the people I idealize most after breakups aren't always the ones I loved the most. They're the ones where something felt unresolved, where I never got a real answer, where the ending was ambiguous or sudden, or just incomplete.
Because the brain hates open loops. It's almost obsessive about closure. And when a story ends without a proper ending, without explanation, without resolution, without the conversation that should have happened, the mind keeps returning to it, keeps trying to finish it.
And in the process of returning to it, it keeps touching the memory. And every time you touch a memory, you reshape it a little.
So the more unresolved the relationship, the more the mind revisits it. And the more it revisits it, the more idealized it becomes, until the person in your head has almost no relationship to the actual person who existed.
Who maybe didn't text back for 3 days at a time, and was emotionally unavailable in ways you spent months making excuses for.
But in the memory, they're just misunderstood, complex, the one who got away.
Because the one who got away is a much better story than the one who wasn't actually that available.
And we are always, always trying to live inside a better story.
Okay, I want to push back on something here, because I think sometimes the idealization is pointing at something real. Like, sometimes you genuinely did have something rare with someone, and the brain isn't lying when it says that was special. Some people really are the ones that don't come around again.
I don't can't disagree that some connections are genuinely rare, but I think there's a difference between recognizing that something was meaningful and turning someone into a myth. One is honoring what was real, the other is building a monument to a fiction, and then measuring every new person against it.
And nobody can compete with a myth.
Nobody can, because the myth doesn't have bad days. The myth doesn't have the argument you had about nothing that somehow became about everything. The myth is just the feeling, distilled, without the context that made the feeling complicated.
So every new person walks in and immediately loses, not because they're not enough, but because they're real, and real can't compete with imaginary.
Which is one of the cruelest ways idealization damages you. It doesn't just keep you attached to the past, it actively poisons the present. It makes genuine connection harder because nothing new can match the edited version of something old.
And you don't even realize that's what's happening. You just keep meeting people and thinking something's missing. There's no spark. It doesn't feel the same.
Because you're not comparing them to a real person, you're comparing them to a feeling your brain manufactured and then labeled with someone's name. I think the most painful version of this is when you realize, years later, that you spent a long time grieving someone who wasn't quite who you thought they were. And the grief was real, the love was real, but the person you were grieving was partly a construction.
And you gave real years to a ghost?
And there's something both sad and strangely freeing about that realization. Sad because you can't get the time back, but freeing because it means the love was never really about them specifically. It was about what they represented, a feeling, a possibility, a version of your life you were hoping for.
And that feeling, that possibility, it's not gone. It wasn't locked inside one specific person.
It was always inside you. They just happened to be the one who activated it. For a while.
Which means someone else can activate it too.
Someone real. Someone whose bad days are also part of the picture. Someone you don't have to edit to love.
That's actually a hopeful thought.
I have them occasionally.
So, what do you actually do if you catch yourself idealizing? If you notice you're building the monument?
I think the first thing is just notice it, without judgment, because the idealization isn't a flaw. It's the brain doing what it was built to do: protect you, make meaning, avoid unbearable pain. You don't have to shame yourself for it.
But you do have to see it for what it is.
You do, and one of the most grounding things you can do is write down, not the highlights, not the feelings, the actual reality, the specific concrete things that didn't work. Not to be cruel about it, just to give the story its full shape back, because you can't grieve something accurately if you've turned it into something it wasn't.
You need the whole picture, not just the beautiful parts.
The whole picture, which was probably messier and more complicated and more human than the version living in your head.
And more human usually means more real, which means it was worth something, even as it was, even with all the parts you've been editing out.
Especially those parts.
If you've been carrying someone in your head as a better version of who they actually were, we hope tonight gave you permission to put that version down. Not to forget them, not to stop caring, just to let them be human again. The way they actually were, the way you actually were together.
3 a.m. Talks. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for being up with us.